Welcome to Crosswind Service Online. I am so glad that you're able to still log on and join with us after a year and a half of just doing service online. I am so glad that we've had this space to worship God and spend time together. And as we come to the end of this season, remember that we are so excited about going indoors and having our kids program indoors too, that we can rush past even the end of a season that could be good for us. So would you please join me to slow down, rest, and worship the creator of the universe and breathe in the goodness that God has for us.
Daily I surrender. Grace for today is all that I need. Surprised by a mercy that's new every morning. Waking my soul to sing. Awaken my soul to sing. I will trust where you lead. I will trust, and I can see. Morning by morning, great is your faithfulness to me. Breath by breath, overtaken by one step at a time when I'm overwhelmed. Oh, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Awaken my soul to sing. Awaken my soul to sing. I will trust where you lead. I will trust, I can't see. Morning by morning, great is your faithfulness. trust with all my heart. You are good, you always are. Morning by morning, great is your faithfulness to me.
The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for worshiping with us. Today we're closing out our series 23andMe, Restful Living in a Restless World. And over the last 3 weeks, we've been spending time in Psalm 23, and we've been walking slowly and deliberately through each verse, learning how Jesus is the Good Shepherd, and how because of that, we can find peace, security, and protection in a world that really doesn't offer very much of those things. In just a bit, Andrea is going to walk us through the last verse in that passage and wrap things up for us. And so we're glad you're joining us for that. Well, I know we've been saying this for a few weeks, but the time has finally come. Next week, things are changing around here at Crosswinds. Starting next Sunday, things are going to look a little different. And that's because next week on Sunday, June 13th, we're moving our Sunday morning service back indoors. So let me tell you a little bit of what this is going to look like. First, we know that there are those of you who are not ready to be indoors yet, and that is totally okay. I think most of you know that we've been doing an outdoor service for the past several months. Well, if you're not ready to go indoors yet, we are going to keep that outdoor service. Currently, it happens at 10 a.m. But starting next week, the outdoor service will move to an hour earlier. So that's going to happen at 9 a.m. And this will be more of a scaled down service with an extended acoustic worship time and a message, all happening outdoors just like it has been. But for those of you who are wanting to go indoors, we will have another service at 10:30 a.m. in our auditorium. And the indoor service is going to have all of the things that you love about pre-pandemic Crosswinds services, including creative elements, worship with a full band, media on the screens, and a message. Now, here's what you also need to know about next week. We're also moving kids ministry back inside as well, birth through 5th grade. But that's only available during the 10:30 service, and we need you to register your kids if you plan on coming. Registration goes live the week before the service, and you can register on our website. Well, I know that at times we throw a lot at you, and sometimes it's hard to remember all that's going on. And a good way to stay in the know on everything Crosswinds is to sign up for the weekly. This is our weekly communication that goes out every Thursday, and it will keep you up to date on all that is happening in the Crosswinds community. You can also follow us on any of our social media platforms to stay in the loop of all that's going on. Well, finally, as pastors, one of the things that we love doing is being able to pray for you. There are so many of you walking through some dark times right now, and you need to know that you don't have to walk through those times alone. Let us pray for you. Well, this is the first Sunday of the month, which means it's Pastor Elder Prayer. And if you would like someone to pray with you, please contact us. You can email your prayer request to us, or you can call the prayer hotline at any time, and one of our pastors or elders will reach out to you so that you can pray together. So please know that even as you're watching this online, that we are here for you. Well, as we continue in our service, we want to thank you for how you support Crosswinds through your gifts. As we start to look ahead into opening up and kind of getting back to normal, we've got a lot planned, and there is a lot for us to do. So if you're not already partnering with us through giving, we'd love to have you start. There's a few really easy ways for you to do that. You can mail a check, you can give online, or you can text. It's really that simple. And for those of you who've been supporting us all along, we are so grateful for your sacrifice. So thank you so much for that. Well, as I said earlier, we're finishing out our series 23andMe, but before Andrea brings the message, we want you to take a look at this short video. Let's watch.
Well, you were just introduced to some superstitions from around the world, and a lot of them you probably hadn't even heard of. Any teachers out there who've been grading with a red pen, if you wrote a student's name down, you might have cursed them. This whole notion of causing or avoiding bad luck is so interesting, and doesn't it make you wonder, where do these ideas even come from? For example, it's bad luck to open an umbrella inside. Where did that come from? Some suggest this belief started around 1200 BC. Egyptians would use umbrellas made of peacock feathers and papyrus to shield themselves from the sun. They believed that if you open an umbrella inside where there wasn't any sun, it would anger the sun god, Ra, and he would punish you. Here's another one. We all know that 13 is an unlucky number. There are a lot of explanations for this one, so I'll just give you one. See, 12 was considered the perfect number in the ancient world. Numeric systems were based on 12. A lot of calendars had 12 months. A day is 2 cycles of 12 hours. But with 12 being such a perfect number, the number after it, 13, messes up the balance of 12. So from then on, 13 was considered unusual and irregular and just bad luck. Okay, and one more. You know it's 7 years bad luck if you break a mirror, right? Well, in ancient times, they believed that a mirror was not only a projection of your appearance, but of your soul. So breaking a mirror also breaks your soul, obviously. And once your soul is damaged, it can't protect you from bad luck. Or a little twist on the explanation, some believed the damaged soul would seek revenge against the one that broke it, and it makes all kinds of bad things happen. I mean, it makes total sense, right? How much you believe these warnings is all about how superstitious you are. I'd say for me, I'm not superstitious. I'm maybe a little stitious. Like, I think black cats are really cute, and if there's something that I need that's under a ladder, I'll walk under it. But I knock on wood, and I throw salt over my shoulder if it gets spilled. Superstition says that there's all sorts of rules and practices that you can do or not do to try to mitigate how much bad luck comes at you. Because none of us want bad luck, right? No one likes that feeling of dread. Something bad may be going to happen. But stepping outside of this whole idea of luck for a minute, I wonder if a lot of us do feel like a lot of bad things have come our way, and maybe we even deserve it. We've all made less than great choices at times, and we might just be waiting for the trouble that we caused to catch up with us. Maybe you have people in your past that you know you didn't do right by, and you worry about the day when you might run into them or they might get back at you in some way. Maybe you think about corners that you've cut or compromises that you've made, and you wonder when that stuff is going to come back and bite you in the butt. Because even as people of faith, the reality is that we don't always live with integrity, right? I mean, we've got secrets, we've got debts that we never paid, we've gotten credit for things that we had no business taking credit for. And some little part of us thinks that all these messes might surface someday, and trouble is just waiting to find us. It's gonna pounce on us. And when it does, we'll know that we brought it on ourselves. Or for some of you, it's not so much about trouble that's following you, but maybe you feel like failure follows you, or mediocrity, or even missed opportunity follows you. Do you ever look back at times and just see a history of thing after thing that has gone wrong for you? And it kind of leaves you wondering, what is it about me that things just never seem to work out right? You might have said no to a job at a startup, and now that startup is booming, and you missed your chance. Or maybe you've dated all the wrong people, and it's messed with your ability to trust people, or even hope that a healthy relationship is possible. I was just talking with someone recently who has 3 adult children, each of whom is not at a good place in life or with God. And this parent feels like things just went so wrong. Whatever your story, when we see all the missteps and the wrong direction in our past, it can feel like that's going to carry into our future too. We tell ourselves that trouble has followed us, so trouble is what's ahead. But when we look at the Bible, and specifically Psalm 23 that we've been in for the past 3 weeks, we find a very different picture of what's coming after us and what lies ahead. We find a God who is a shepherd, leading us to water and guiding us on the right path and preparing a bountiful table and walking with us even in the darkest valley. And as we close the chapter today with verse 6, we'll find something that is coming after us, but it's very different than what we're afraid of. Psalm 23:6 says, "Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." See, life with the shepherd means that something good is following you. It is actively pursuing you. When we walk with the shepherd, we can rest in the truth that his goodness and his mercy are always at our disposal. Those are the things that are coming after us, that are following us. David says, they're following me. What does that mean, following us? It's kind of a unique way to phrase it. Really, what he means here is that they aren't just kind of lurking in the background. Actually, what he means is more of an active pursuit of you. There was this weird term in ancient Judaism called a blood avenger, not to be confused with Marvel's Avengers, totally different concept. A blood avenger was someone who was going after another person who had killed someone else. The blood avenger was avenging someone's death. So the avenger would go after the murderer to make them pay for killing the other person. It's like a love triangle, but instead a death triangle. Okay, are you with me? So there was this really specific thing that the person being chased could do. They could flee to the temple, which they also called the house of the Lord. Remember that for a little bit later. So at the temple, there was an altar, and it was very ornate. And it had these projections coming off of the corners that they called horns. And so the person would enter the temple, they would go to the altar, and they would grab the horns of the altar. And as they did that, what they were doing was asking for mercy and protection. The altar would be like a place of refuge. Just like when you were little, you were playing tag and something was safe, except without the part about the blood and the death and, all the avenging. Okay, so we read about this a couple different times in the Bible, and in those places, the word that describes the blood avenger chasing after the other guy is the same word that David uses here in verse 6. So when he says, goodness and mercy follow me, it's not a passive lurking behind you, may or may not catch up to you. No, it is a passionate, purposeful pursuit. It's more like a chasing after you. But instead of the chasing causing fear and making you want to escape, the goodness and the mercy lead you to a place of safety and protection. Instead of being pursued by someone who is vengeful, we're pursued by the goodness and mercy of God. If you know David's story, you know that before he was king, when Saul was still on the throne, Saul was pursuing David. Saul was angry and vengeful, and he wanted to kill David. David was very familiar with the fear that makes you want to run to a safe place. So it's interesting that in this psalm, what's chasing after him instead is God's goodness and mercy. And it reveals what David has learned about his true shepherd. In this series, we hope that you have also learned something about your shepherd and that those things have resonated with you. Today, as we study this last little verse, I think you'll find even more that Jesus has for you, especially those of you who tell yourself that trouble has followed you, so trouble's what's ahead. Because what this verse says to us is that the shepherd says, you can count on my goodness and mercy. I think most of us are jaded enough to know that there are very few things that we can count on in this world, but God says we can count on his goodness and mercy. I want you to notice in the verse that very first word, surely. So much confidence in that one little word, surely, like, of course, it's a no-brainer. Of this, I am confident. David writes, surely goodness and mercy will follow me. And I'm not going to make the Shirley joke from Airplane because I'm so sick of the people who always feel like when they hear the word Shirley, they have to say, don't call me Shirley. So I'm not going to do that. This verse expresses total confidence in what God will do. And we can count on these loving attributes of God because they're based on who he is, not on anything that we do or don't do. So even in the middle of all the trouble that we get ourselves into, none of it cancels God's ability to find us with his goodness and his mercy. Even in the secrets that you have, and the mistakes that you've made, and the failure that you feel like has marked you, there is goodness and mercy for you. I mean, can you just begin to imagine how God might meet you in these places in your life and bring his loving kindness to your situation, making what was once trouble into a place of restoration and reconciliation? That is what God, as our shepherd, does for us. You tell yourself that trouble has followed you, so trouble is what's ahead. But the shepherd says, you can count on my goodness and mercy. But there's more. Here's what David says next. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. All the days. That means every day, you guys. That day when you're a selfish grump, goodness and mercy are coming after you. That day when you broke a commitment that you had, goodness and mercy following after you. And that day when you did something that you're too embarrassed to even say out loud, even that day, your shepherd has a full supply of goodness and mercy just for you. This is the faithfulness of God. The question is, will we receive what he has for us? David would have been very familiar with the story of his ancestors, the Israelites who came out of Egypt, who found themselves in the desert with kind of nowhere to go, no resources, not even sure what they were supposed to be doing. And when they ran out of food, God provided manna every day, every single day, just there for them. He provided. And believe me, those early followers of God, they had a lot of bad days. They were not exemplary at all, just like us. And yet, every day, God's goodness and mercy came in the form of manna. So, when David writes that goodness and mercy is all the days, he means all the days. And that just blows my mind. I mean, when I try to do something all the days, I always fail. Just these past 2 weeks, I've been trying to do something special for our daughter, Kennedy, who turned 13. And the plan was that every morning for 13 days leading up to her birthday, I would set out a picture of her at each age. So the first day it was a baby picture, and then the next day it was a picture when she was 1, and then 2. Okay, you get it, all the way up to this year. And I've been planning this for a while, and I found all the pictures I wanted to use and printed them all out, and then I hid them upstairs so I could get to them really easily every day. I even put reminders on my phone so that I could set them out each night, and then she'd wake up and find them. Okay, it shouldn't have been that hard to get them out before she wakes up. It was just 13 days, and I missed about 9 of them. I mean, like, I would wake up and I would hear her through the wall, like, getting ready for the day, and I'm like, I forgot to put the picture out, and then I get up and put it out, and it was a whole thing. And what I learned is I'm not good with all the days. So to think that God's unfailing love, to use the word from a different translation, it comes after me every day. It gives me so much security and hope. And it means that today, like this very day, whatever day you're watching this, that there is goodness and mercy coming at you. God already put the picture of you out in the hallway as if every day is your 13th birthday. And David, he declares with confidence in the shepherd, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. In other words, you can count on God's goodness and mercy every day for all your days. The shepherd never runs out. He's like Mary Poppins following you around with that bottomless bag that she has, just pulling out endless goodness and mercy all day long, all the days. This whole chapter 23, it ends with the phrase, "And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." We already talked about how the house of the Lord was another way to talk about the temple. Remember, where the guy being chased would run to. And they called it the house of the Lord because in Jewish tradition, the temple was where God's presence was experienced. So the psalmist is saying, I get to stay in God's presence. And it's even better news for us today because through Jesus, we have full access to God's presence at all times. There's no physical place where we have to go. We've been given the Spirit, and it lives in us, the very essence of God, giving us everything we need, all the goodness and all the mercy, all the time. I mean, think about what it is to dwell. We don't really use that word that much, but doesn't it feel restful and peaceful? Like you just have all the time in the world to just sit down and stay a while. We are invited every day to sit down and stay a while with God, to be surrounded by his goodness and mercy. And really, this is an invitation to shift your thinking from trouble is following me and trouble is ahead to my reality with the shepherd is to live surrounded by his care of me, to grab hold of the life-giving things that he offers me every day. And that perspective change might be something that you need today. When David writes, "Dwell in the house of the Lord forever," it's probably not lost on you that it's also a picture of heaven. And that's the ultimate long-term view, right? Because in the end, no matter what we have faced in this life, we have the hope of heaven, where we're promised a new life, a life with God where nothing gets in the way. And all the days that we didn't live in God's goodness and didn't embrace his mercy, they just become our past, because our new reality will be constantly dwelling in God's house. I'm so grateful that we have a God who gives us even a taste of that now. And I think that this verse is saying that because we are in God's presence now, that God has these things for us here and in the future. So they're there for the taking. His loving care is chasing after us. And some of you might be missing on this taste of heaven now because you've resigned yourself to kind of living the less than life. I mean, maybe you feel like you don't deserve God's goodness, or maybe you simply don't believe it. And because, like I said earlier, you look back on life and you see it as a litany of things gone wrong, failures, missed opportunities, things like that, it does not feel like a taste of heaven has followed you. But as I read the New Testament, I don't see any qualifiers for God's mercy. Because remember, he offers it out of who he is, not based on what we have or haven't done to earn it. Jesus made it very clear that he is for everyone. And so that means we don't have to wait for heaven to experience him as our shepherd. And in fact, I think part of what we're supposed to be doing in this life is to get heaven started now in the way that we dwell with God. Charles Spurgeon was a preacher from the 1800s, and I found this thing he wrote that really gives a beautiful picture of this idea. He says this: "While I am here, I will be a child at home with my God. The whole world shall be his house to me. And when I ascend into the upper chamber, I shall not change my company, nor even change the house. I shall only go to dwell in the upper story of the house of the Lord forever." Or for those of you who got lost in all the shalls of that quote, you might prefer a different theologian, Belinda Carlisle, who said, "Ooh, heaven is a place on earth." Either one works. The point is, God is pursuing you in order to bless you with his goodness and his mercy. And maybe some of you haven't really noticed his goodness and mercy in your past. So it's hard to see it in your future, but it's worth pointing out that David's history wasn't all rosy either. I mean, his brothers were jealous of him. Some of them didn't think that he should be king. 2 different times, Saul threw a spear at him to try to kill him, and that was before the years of David's life where he was fleeing Saul, who was still trying to kill him. David's best friend, Jonathan, was killed. Later, his own firstborn son died. And yet, even with all this, David is able to say that God's goodness and mercy follows him. He's able to recognize it in his past and see it in his future. And maybe you could do that too. As easy as it is to look back and notice everything that's been bad that's been following you, what would it be this week to take some time and notice where goodness has followed you too, where it has shown up in the middle of the bad, and where mercy has shown up, which, by the way, for mercy to show up, it implies that you needed it, that you did something that you needed forgiveness for. You see, God doesn't abandon you when you mess up. He meets you with mercy. If we're going to dwell both now and in the future, part of how we do that is to rest in the goodness that God has for us. We started a few weeks ago in verse 1, where David expresses his belief that life with the shepherd is a life without lack. He says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And by the end of this short psalm, we have moved from this description of not being in want to an even fuller existence, a life of utter abundance. And the way that you get from having enough to having total overflowing abundance is you continually stay in step with Jesus, paying attention to what the shepherd has for you. Over this series, we have challenged you to lean into what the shepherd says as opposed to what we tell ourselves. You can trust that the shepherd will guide you in the right path, that he will make his presence known in the middle of your fear, that he never stops fighting for you and he knows what you're up against, that he protects you even from yourself, that he's working on your problem even before you get to the table. And then, of course, what we learned today, that you can count on his goodness and mercy every day, all your days. These are the antidotes to the restlessness that comes so easily to us. God invites you to rest in his love for you, his goodness, his attentive care in your life. We're going to close with a worship song that gives you a chance to let your soul rest. The lyrics invite you to breathe deep of all of God's goodness and to stay in that space until it sinks in. And that's my encouragement to you. Let the Spirit who is in you lead you to the shepherd, where you will find exactly what your soul needs. Would you pray with me? Oh God, our shepherd, we want nothing more than for you to draw us close, to guide us, to be with us, to invite us to the table, and God, to shower us with your goodness and mercy. We are so thankful that it is because of you and not us. So even now, God, would you speak so clearly to every heart and let us rest in you as our perfect and loving Father. In Jesus' name, amen.
You will never leave. Your love sustaining me. Before I even knew what love was, you brought me here to rest and given me space to breathe. And I'll stay still until it seems fair. I'll lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. and giving me space to breathe. So I'll stay still until it sings. Oh, yeah. And I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Breathe deep and know that He's good. He's a love like no other. I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. And I will breathe deep and know that He's good. He's a love like no other. I have all that I need. I have all that I need, God. I'm provided for. And I rest and I know You're right. I rest and I know You're true. Now I can see Your love is better than all the others that I have seen. And I'm breathing deep all of Your goodness, Your love and kindness to me. And now I can see Your love is better than all the others that I've seen. And I'm breathing deep, all of Your goodness, Your love and kindness to me. And I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Oh, breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Oh, breathe deep, know that He's good. He's a love like no other. Lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. I will breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. Putting my trust in You, putting my hope in You, God. I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Resting in You, God. Breathe deep